I just spent the past few weeks traveling in Saudi Arabia, and in this video I would like to answer your questions about my time and my experiences there. I have all your questions in front of me on the laptop right now, so let's start right away. And yeah, there will be timestamps down below, so you can skip ahead to the questions you are interested in the most. Did you experience poverty there? I mean, have you seen people that were homeless in Saudi Arabia? And I can say 100% I haven't seen a single homeless person. So I visited 3 different cities in Saudi Arabia: Riyadh, the capital, Medina and Jeddah, and not a single homeless person to be seen everywhere, at least not in the areas that I visited. I mostly sticked around the city center, but in Riyadh, for example, I also ventured into some other areas that were outside of the city center, and yeah, nowhere I have seen a homeless person. I also didn't really see poverty. Like in many countries, you just walk around the streets and you see poverty. I think you know what I'm talking about, right? You can just see that, and I didn't see anything like that at all in Saudi Arabia, not in Riyadh, not in Medina, and not in Jeddah. And then the next question, something that was actually asked a lot in my comment section of all the videos I filmed in Saudi Arabia. I'm mostly interested in the appropriate dress code for tourist men and women. And yeah, the dress code is something that I also wasn't sure about. I think I also mentioned that in my arrival video, so my first video from Riyadh, that I wasn't sure like how to dress properly, because I had in my mind that Saudi is a very strict country and you have to dress appropriate. But so many people actually in the comment section told me, oh, don't worry about it, just wear whatever you want basically. But I still feel like it would be good to dress in a modest way. I can just speak from my perspective as a man. I was wearing t-shirts outside, I had a jacket as well, and I was wearing long pants, but also because the time of the year, I was visiting Saudi Arabia at the beginning of the year, so it wasn't that warm like in summer. It was, I think, around 16 to 20 degrees usually. So I was wearing a long pants and then a t-shirt, sometimes a jacket, and I felt totally alright with that. I can say though that I haven't seen a single local man wearing just a t-shirt, but once again, that's probably due to the time of the year. It's probably different in summer. Regarding dress code for women, I'm not 100% sure, but because I'm not a woman, I don't really know, but based on what I have seen, most women there are covered, but not all of them. You also see women without a headscarf, without a hijab, but they are all wearing long pants and in a modest way, I would say. And by the way, you're currently watching a video on my second channel. If you want to see my full-length videos from Saudi Arabia, then head over to my main channel, Ken Abroad. I will link it in the description. And then the next question, also a very interesting topic. Did you feel safe in Saudi Arabia? And I can say 100% I felt super safe my entire time in Saudi Arabia. It's actually, I think I compared that in one of my Jeddah videos to how I felt in China, because I felt similar in Saudi Arabia as I felt in China. It's very clean, it's very modern, it's very well organized, and also very safe. So you have a lot of cameras everywhere, and that makes me as a tourist feel safe. And I also think I read that the crime rates are very, very low in Saudi Arabia, and that is something that makes me feel very safe as a tourist. I also think that they have some laws that from a European perspective can be seen as quite strict laws, but I have to say, usually when I'm in a country and they have strict laws there, the safer I feel. So the stricter the laws, the safer I feel usually. So I think that's something good. So I had absolutely zero safety concerns, no matter in which city I was, Riyadh, Medina or Jeddah. During the day, in the evening after sunset, I felt totally alright. And then one part of this question is, are there any content restrictions such as YouTube or Instagram that you cannot access? And you know, some countries, China for example, some apps are blocked. For example, in China you can't access YouTube or WhatsApp or Google, but there was no such thing in Saudi Arabia. I was able to access all my apps as usual. I didn't need a VPN, everything was accessible. So no worries about that. And then I have heard something that ladies or women are allowed to drive in Saudi Arabia now. Have you seen any female drivers in Riyadh, Medina and Jeddah? And yeah, I think there used to be a law that women are not allowed to drive, but I don't remember which year exactly, but females are allowed to drive, and I have seen plenty of female drivers on the roads in all the cities that I visited in Saudi Arabia. So yes, there are also female drivers in Saudi Arabia now. And then also a very interesting question, is Saudi Arabia an expensive country? I think because the people of my country, I love to go there for work. Please answer me, lots of love from India. Greetings to India. And yeah, I can definitely say Saudi Arabia is a bit pricier compared to many countries I visited previously on my channel. So I'm mostly traveling around Southeast Asia, but we also visited many countries in East Asia or in South Asia on my channel. And I think from all the countries I visited so far on my channel, Saudi Arabia is the most expensive country. Still, I would say it's cheaper compared to European prices or North American prices. Definitely, especially the food, for example. You can find restaurants in Saudi Arabia where you can get a meal for like, I would say around $5-6, maybe 7 or 8. You will not find restaurants like that in Europe and Germany where I'm from. So food can be quite inexpensive, but yeah, definitely a higher price compared to many other Asian countries. Oh wait, I have to say maybe Singapore is more expensive than Saudi Arabia. Actually, is Singapore more expensive? I think the hotels in Singapore are more expensive, but food actually can also be quite inexpensive in Singapore, but that's a different topic. But yeah, Saudi Arabia is definitely a bit pricier of a travel destination compared to many other Asian countries. For example, also hotels. I spend quite a lot of money on hotels in Saudi Arabia. I think there's a question later on talking about that. So we will come back to the hotel price topic later on. Let's go to the next question. How easy is it to get the visa, the flights, tickets, hotel, etc.? Very, very easy. I applied for the visa. So with a German passport, I need a visa for Saudi Arabia. And I applied for it on the official website. I will leave a link down here. And I think I got the visa approved within like 10-15 minutes. Very straightforward, very easy. The application process was, at least with the German passport, also very easy and simple. Took me maybe like 5 minutes to fill out everything. I paid $100 for the visa though, so it was definitely a visa that, yeah, you have to pay a bit of money for, but it was easy to get. And actually, when I arrived in Riyadh, one of the immigration officers also told me that I could have also gotten a visa on arrival there. So that would have been probably even easier then, but yeah, no problem. And also booking flight tickets, hotel, etc. as simple as in any other country. I'm usually booking my hotels either on the hotel app when I'm staying in like Hilton or Marriott hotels. I'm using the hotel app because then I get membership points and I have status there, or booking.com. And for flights, yeah, as simple as in any other country. So no worries about finding hotels and flights while in Saudi Arabia. And then the next question, from a scale of 1 to 10, how about the cleanliness? And yes, Saudi Arabia was definitely one of the cleanest countries I have been to, at least the city centers. I remember when I was walking around the city center of Riyadh, everything there is very modern, very fancy, very, very clean. But then I also explored some areas outside of the city center, and there it wasn't as clean and modern as in the city center, but still I would rate it as relatively clean. And also Jeddah and Medina were very, very clean. So nothing to complain about that at all. So the cleanliness, yeah, I would actually say 10 out of 10, at least the city centers. Outside the city center, at least in Riyadh, maybe like a 7 or 8 out of 10, so still very clean. But yeah, I was actually quite impressed about how clean Saudi Arabia is. And that was actually quite a cool experience. And then, which city did you enjoy the most during your trip to Saudi Arabia? And yeah, like I said before, I visited only 3 cities, Riyadh, Medina and Jeddah. And I think my favorite city out of these 3, I liked all of them. I had good experiences on all of them, and I would be curious to visit all of them again. But I think if I have to choose now, I will probably choose Jeddah. The reason is the vibes in Jeddah were just pretty cool because you have a really beautiful ocean front where you can get a fresh breeze, the wind in your face from the ocean. Super beautiful to walk around the ocean front there. But then you also have a really historical old city center, which I really like to see usually. So the mix of, yeah, this old historical city center, the beautiful ocean front, that was just really, really cool in Jeddah. And overall the vibes were a bit relaxed. It was a really cool oceanfront city, also very modern, very clean, of course. So if I have to choose, then I would probably choose Jeddah out of the 3 cities I have visited so far in Saudi Arabia. And then if you had the opportunity to live in Saudi Arabia, would you take it? That is difficult to answer. I would definitely be curious to spend more time there. And I can imagine that living there would be a very convenient experience. But probably like you need to speak the local language. Like English was okay. There's another question coming later where I'm talking about the English. But I think, yeah, if you speak Arabic, then I can imagine that Saudi Arabia is a very convenient country to live in. Of course, I've just been there as a tourist. I spent a few weeks there as a tourist. You don't really get to see the country behind the scenes when you're just visiting as a tourist. So I don't really know how it is to live there or how it is to stay there long term. So yeah, difficult to answer, but I can say I would be curious to spend more time in Saudi Arabia, and then I could maybe answer if I would like to live there really long term or not. And then, what's the best meal you had during your trip? And first of all, I can really say that the food in Saudi Arabia was absolutely phenomenal. I tried so many delicious dishes there, and yeah, I couldn't get enough of the food. But I also have to say I overall like Middle Eastern cuisine. So I also liked Middle Eastern cuisine before I came to Saudi Arabia. For example, when I was in Muscat, Oman, the food there was also amazing. I really like Turkish cuisine. I just like shawarmas, I like kebabs, the way they spice their meats in the Middle East. So I'm a huge fan of that. Or I was a huge fan of that even before coming to Saudi Arabia. And yeah, the meals I had in Saudi Arabia were really, really delicious. I tried so many different kebabs and shawarmas, and I tried camel meat in Riyadh. That was something very special and very delicious. But I think if I have to choose one meal, I actually have to choose an Iraqi meal. I was in an Iraqi restaurant in Jeddah, and I ordered Iraqi kebab there, and that was, oh wow, that was so delicious. And that was my favorite meal in Saudi Arabia, although it was not really a dish from Saudi Arabia. I think if I have to choose a local meal, then I would probably choose the camel kabsa that I had in Riyadh. Also very special and very delicious. And then we have two questions here. Can you do a lot of common man things on app digitally, like ordering food, getting trains, football tickets, etc.? I'm not 100% sure there because, yeah, I was just there as a tourist. I can imagine that they have many apps, so you can probably do many things digital, similar like in China. I got my football tickets on an app, so I visited a Cristiano Ronaldo match in Riyadh, a match from the team Al Nassr, and I ordered the tickets on an app. So that was pretty simple and straightforward. I'm pretty sure that they also have food ordering apps there, although I haven't used any. And then they have Uber, they have Careem, which you can use to get taxis around the city. So definitely no problem. I'm pretty sure they have many apps to do everything digitally nowadays. And then, yeah, the second part of his question, how much did you spend for hotels and taxi, domestic flights, if any? And yeah, we talked about the price topic earlier already. Now I'm going into more details. Yeah, I spent quite a lot of money for hotels, on average about $200 per night. But I also have to say I only stayed in 5-star luxury hotels like Hilton hotels, Marriott hotels. I really like these brands, and I'm a member with these brands, so I get points when I'm staying with them. And because I have membership status, I usually get upgraded to better rooms. That's why I just like staying with these hotel brands. I'm pretty sure you can also find cheaper budget options in Saudi Arabia. I'm sure if you scroll around booking.com, you will find cheaper local hotel brands, of course. But yeah, I spent on average $200 per night for my hotels in Saudi Arabia. Taxis are also, yeah, quite not really expensive compared to Western standards, but pricier compared to other Asian countries. For example, I took quite a lot of Uber rides, especially in Riyadh, and that can add up a lot. Like a Uber ride, let's say like 15-20 minutes in the city. I'm not 100% sure how much that cost, but it was maybe like $10-15. And if you take like 3 or 4 of them every day, that adds up a lot, especially if you spend a few weeks there. So Uber rides, they add up a lot. And also the taxis, I think if you take a metro taxi, which I also took a few times, they are usually a bit, I don't remember, were they cheaper or pricier than Uber? I think a bit pricier than Uber actually, so Uber is usually a bit cheaper, but overall quite similar, I would say. And yeah, domestic flights, I took one domestic flight, that was my flight from Riyadh to Medina. But the regular economy class ticket would have been, I think, about $50 to $60, so quite inexpensive for a flight, I would say. But I took the business class experience where I paid $400, but yeah, I actually only did that for the video, so I can show the business class of Saudi Airlines in the video. Usually I would have taken the economy class ticket and then yeah, $50–60. They have many domestic flights available every single day between the cities, so that would be quite easy and convenient to take a domestic flight in Saudi Arabia actually. And then what are the things that you didn't expect from visiting Saudi Arabia, plus things you expected but wasn't true? So that is an interesting question, and I thought about that also while I was there already. So when I came to Saudi Arabia, I was a bit unsure what to expect because I grew up with so many negative news around me about the country. Like Saudi Arabia is usually negatively portrayed in Western media. Like the Western media talks a lot about the strict laws there. Women are not allowed to drive. Women need to cover up the whole time. Like these are things that I was reading all my life in the Western media about Saudi Arabia. So I came there thinking, oh, this is maybe a very strict country, I have to be careful. But then the reality was like, I didn't feel at all like I'm in a very strict country. Like I had no problems with my camera. I felt super comfortable walking around with the camera. Like I didn't feel like I need to dress very strict or modest. So that was actually quite a surprise that the country is not as strict, at least not for a tourist, as I maybe would have thought before coming there. So that was actually quite a surprise. And then, is Saudi Arabia worth to visit, or is it tiring or just chill? I actually really enjoyed my stay there, so I think for me it was definitely worth visiting. I had a great time. I really enjoyed experiencing this country, and so it depends on what you like. Like if you usually like the Middle East, like Middle Eastern cuisine, Middle Eastern culture, then I think it's definitely worth to also have a look at Saudi Arabia. So I can actually recommend going to Saudi Arabia, yes. And then a question connected to that. Would you recommend to visit Saudi Arabia for non-Muslims? And yeah, also I read many comments under my videos of people being concerned about going there as a non-Muslim. But I can say 100% I felt welcomed even as a non-Muslim. I think you saw many examples in my videos where people treated me with such a generosity, welcoming, didn't let me pay for my tea, for my food, gave me things for free. So that was really, really overwhelming how people treated me there. And I can also say actually, sometimes I get the comment, oh, they only treat you like that because you are filming, because you walk around with the camera. Like, oh, the shop only gave you this for free because you were filming it. And I can say no. Also, when I walked around without the camera, like not every time I left my hotel in Saudi Arabia, I had my camera on. So there were also situations where I was walking around off camera and it was exactly the same. People treated me exactly the same. Very generous, very welcoming, very hospitable. So I have had no problems visiting Saudi Arabia as a non-Muslim. So if you're watching this and you're not a Muslim thinking about going there, I think you should not be worried. Just go there and experience the warm, hospitable generosity of the people there, and I think you will have a great time. My question, the taxi driver in Jeddah that took you around the circles, was it a Saudi driver or South Asian? So there was one situation in my final video from Saudi Arabia in Jeddah where a taxi driver was driving around in circles to increase the meter price that I have to pay. I think, I'm not 100% sure if that was the reason, but I think he did that. And I'm not really sure where he was from. I don't know, and I think it doesn't really matter where he was from. Like, I had situations like this in other countries, no matter from which country the taxi driver was from, so that can happen no matter where your taxi driver is from. But there's actually one interesting thing that I noticed, and I remember I talked about that with one of my Uber drivers. So every time I took a regular metered taxi, like these regular taxis driving around the city with a taxi symbol on top, you know, the drivers were always foreigners. Many of them were from like Pakistan, Bangladesh, Egypt, India. So the regular taxi drivers were always foreigners. But when I took an Uber, the drivers were always locals. And I think I remember that my Uber driver told me that if you want to work for Uber in Saudi Arabia, you have to be a local. So foreigners are not allowed to drive for Uber in Saudi Arabia. But yeah, I'm not 100% sure if I remember that correctly, but I think that's what he was saying to me. So yeah, all the regular taxi drivers are foreigners and all the Uber drivers in Saudi Arabia are locals. That's my experience at least. And then I also asked my Instagram followers to send over some questions. In case you're not following me on Instagram yet, feel free to also follow me there, Ken Abroad on Instagram. I'm posting a lot of stories, behind the scenes, updates where I am, etc. So feel free to also follow me on Instagram. And then also a question I actually got asked a lot. Did the Saudi government sponsor your trip there? And this is funny, like I had a similar situation before in China. Like every time I filmed the video in China, plenty of comments accused me of being paid by the Chinese government, and for some reason it was very similar in Saudi Arabia. It's funny, like these questions usually come from Western people because they simply can't think that you go to a country like this as a Westerner and have a good experience. So no, nobody paid for my trip in Saudi Arabia. I paid for everything myself. I was not sponsored by the Saudi government, so everything I said was just my opinion, not because somebody told me to say that. So no, my trip was not sponsored, and actually none of my trips ever has been sponsored by any government. And then also a question that is actually very interesting for many foreigners trying to visit Saudi Arabia. Did you have any problems with the language? And yeah, I can say not everyone in Saudi Arabia speaks English. So it's not like, so there are countries, for example, the Philippines, where almost everyone speaks English, or Malaysia, where you have absolutely no problems with English everywhere you're going. So it was not like that in Saudi Arabia. The English level sometimes is a bit low, but I would still say it was okay. So I have had no situation where I was like really stuck because I couldn't communicate with someone. So English was not a problem. And also, like many of the workers you're interacting with, like whether it's waiters in the hotel or in restaurants, the staff in your hotel, many of the taxi drivers, or like people like working on the streets or working in the metro stations, many of these workers are foreigners, and they, at least in my experience, usually spoke English, at least to an okay level. And every time I spoke with a local, the English was usually okay, sometimes good. So I would say like between okay and good. So I have had no problems with English at all. And yeah, sometimes I use my Google Translate as well, which is working really good nowadays. So you can just download Google Translate, put it from your language to Arabic. And if there is a situation where you're really stuck, just use Google Translate. If you download the language before using Wi-Fi, then you can even use it if you're not connected to data. So yeah, absolutely no problem. And speaking of data, many of you also asked me if I used a local SIM card in Saudi Arabia, or how did I manage to get mobile data everywhere. And I'm using an eSIM on all my trips. I'm using Holafly eSIM. This is not a sponsored video by Holafly, but I can really recommend them. I'm using them in every single country I'm going to nowadays. So having an eSIM is very convenient, very straightforward. And if you want to check out my eSIM, once again, not a sponsored video, but if you want to check out my Holafly eSIM provider, I will leave a link in the description, and if you use my link, you can even get a discount with Holafly. And then the next question, at any point did you feel unwelcomed? And yeah, I think I mentioned that before. I felt really welcomed my whole time in Saudi Arabia. That was actually very overwhelming, and I can even say Saudi Arabia is one of the most hospitable countries I have ever been to. Like if I'm thinking of hospitable countries, places like Pakistan come in mind immediately. Pakistan is a very hospitable country where also people treated me very welcoming, very hospitable, and it was very similar in Saudi Arabia. The people were absolutely amazing. You saw plenty of situations in my videos where people gave me things for free, paid for my tea. There was even a guy paying for my haircut in Jeddah. That was overwhelmingly beautiful, and yeah, I felt very welcome. It is a very hospitable country. And yeah, not just because I was filming it, I was a vlogger there. Situations like that also happened off camera when I was walking around without my camera. So that was not a YouTuber's privilege or something like that. I can say though, I got many comments of people saying things like, oh, they're only treating you like that because you are a right Westerner. And that of course I can't judge. So there were some comments. I remember somebody told me that oh, I am a black person and I got treated very badly when I was in Riyadh. People were not welcoming, and yeah, that is sad to hear, but I can't judge that because yeah, I am white, I'm a Westerner, so I don't know how people are being treated if they are not Westerners, so I can't say anything about that. But from my perspective, I felt very, very welcomed, and the people were very hospitable and welcoming, generous, and that was actually a really cool experience. And then, how can I become a traveler like you, sir? Sponsored travel and talk about experience. Actually a question not related to Saudi Arabia, but very quickly, if you want to do the same thing that I am doing, traveling the world, visiting different countries, and basically getting paid for it, because I am getting paid because I'm getting views, like the platforms I'm posting my videos to, YouTube, Facebook, TikTok and Instagram, the platforms are paying the creators for getting views. Except of Instagram, Instagram doesn't pay us to get views, but Facebook, TikTok and YouTube are paying their creators for getting views. So every time you're watching one of my videos, I am getting paid. And if you want to do the same, I actually have a course online in which I teach people exactly how to become a full-time travel content creator like myself as well. There's a link to my course in the description as well if you're curious to check it out. Do you feel it would be safer for a solo female traveler? Are female head scarves a 100% necessity? And also a very interesting question I was reading a lot in the comment section. How safe is it for female travelers? And do you have to be covered as a female? So first of all, I can say I saw plenty of women without being covered, without a scarf, without a hijab. Although I have to say that the majority of women on the streets in Saudi Arabia is covered. Many even like fully, completely covered. But it's not 100% necessary as far as I understand it. I think if there would be a law that requires women to cover outside, then all the women would be covered, right? And I saw plenty of women not covered, and I think that shows that it is not required by law. But maybe someone in the comment section can tell us more about that, because I'm not 100% sure, because I'm not a woman. But I saw plenty of women not covered, and I think, I can't really talk about how safe it is as a female because I'm not a female. I felt safe as a man, but my feeling would tell me that as a woman you can also feel safe in Saudi Arabia. And then also a question related to that, how do you think it could be as a woman traveling there? And once again, I'm not a woman, so I can't 100% judge that, but my feeling would be that also as a woman you would have a great time in Saudi Arabia, and probably you can also feel very safe there. But once again, maybe check out another channel of a female actually traveling there if you want to be double sure. And then, when is the perfect time to come there? So I know that the summers in Saudi Arabia tend to get really, really hot. And actually I planned to visit Saudi Arabia already last year. It was in late August, early September. And I remember I was like thinking about the trip, looking into flights already, and then I checked the weather in Saudi Arabia, and that was like end of August, and the temperature there was like 40-45 degrees, which is extremely hot in my opinion. So I thought, I don't really want to go there when it's like 40+ degrees. So look into the different times of the year. The summer gets usually very hot in the Middle East, I think in general. And I was there, in the beginning of 2025, and I would say the temperature while I was there was actually perfect, like between 16 and 24, 25 degrees. And that, in my opinion, is the perfect temperature. You can walk around outside with a t-shirt or like a thin jacket and it feels comfortable. You're not sweating when walking around for an hour or two. So that was the perfect temperature. So I think in like December, January, February, these are probably good times to visit. But make sure a quick Google search can tell you more about that. How do locals act towards tourists and the camera? Did it feel disrespectful to film there? Also a very interesting question. If you're watching this video and you're thinking of going there as a YouTuber, as a travel content creator as well, I had some thoughts about that before coming to Saudi as well. Like I was not sure if I'm going to be like allowed to film everywhere, and like there were not many situations where like somebody was not like keen to be in the video, but there were a few situations. I had a few situations where females around me did not want to be in the video. Like sometimes I noticed that because like they saw me filming and then they were like doing like this, like covering their faces. And as soon as I realized that, I was of course pointing the camera away from them out of respect. And there was one situation where a woman was sitting in a restaurant next to me. I was filming myself trying some food, and there was a woman sitting like on the opposite side of me basically, and she asked me like, hey, can you please not film me? But yeah, that's of course no problem. Whenever someone asks me like that, of course I'm not filming this person, so that was no problem at all. But overall, I felt very okay walking around with my camera. Like many people were even like super keen to talk to me on camera, and I'm never like hiding my camera. Like whenever I'm filming, like I'm holding the camera basically right in front of my face, and everyone around me can clearly see that I am filming. So I'm not trying to hide my camera or filming secretly. Every time I'm filming, like not only in Saudi Arabia, in any country, I'm always filming. Like obviously people around see that I am filming. So when people then approach me while I'm filming or start to talk to me, they know that I'm filming. So if someone speaks to me while I'm filming, then I assume, okay, that person has no problem to be on camera because I'm obviously filming. They obviously know what a camera is in front of my face. But yeah, overall, I felt comfortable filming in Saudi Arabia. Just, yeah, a few situations where I noticed someone around me was not keen to be on video, and that was totally fine. I then, yeah, either cut them out of the video or pointed my camera like not towards them. So that was overall no problem. And then how much does the visa on arrival cost? So I didn't got the visa on arrival. I applied for the visa before on the official website. Once again, the link is right here. And I paid quite exactly $100 for my visa, but I think if I remember correctly, my visa would have been valid for 90 days and even multiple entry. So it was a 90-day multiple entry visa, so actually quite a long visa. There was no like shorter option or like no shorter and cheaper option, so that was the only option I had. But yeah, this is maybe different if you don't have a German passport. Once again, this link right here will give you all the information. And I would assume that the visa on arrival has the same price as the visa, the e-visa that you apply before going there. And then also a very interesting question, how was it all like? What's the vibe you were getting? Typical Middle East vibe like in movies. And yeah, definitely a very stereotype vibe, I would say. I think I mentioned that in my train video when I took the train from Medina to Jeddah, like looking out of the window, riding through the desert. It looked like in a Disney movie I was watching when I was a child, like desert and then little oases with palm trees here and there. So that was actually quite beautiful and very typical like in the movies. And yeah, also the vibes I was getting in the cities, yeah, very Middle Eastern like vibes. So overall, yeah, pretty much as I would have expected Saudi Arabia to look like and to feel like, if I'm honest. And then also a question that has been asked a lot, would you come back? If so, what else would you explore that you didn't this time? And yeah, 100% I would be very keen to return to Saudi Arabia, and I'm very sure sooner or later I will return to Saudi Arabia. And then, yeah, usually when I'm visiting a country for the second time, I'm more going into the countryside, seeing some rural areas, some lesser known areas, more off the beaten path. So when I'm coming to a country for the first time, of course, I want to see the famous places. I want to see the capital city, the biggest city. So that's what I did on my first trip now to Saudi Arabia. Like obviously Riyadh, the capital, you have to see that. I was very keen to visit Jeddah because I heard so many good things about Jeddah. And then I was also very excited to see Medina, a very holy and sacred city. And yeah, next time I will probably try to visit some lesser known areas, maybe smaller towns, maybe some villages. I think I would be very, very curious to see villages in Saudi Arabia, like very rural areas, villages where just a few hundred, maybe 1,000-2,000 people are living. Maybe doing like a trip through the desert. That would be really, really cool. And probably the next time I'm coming, I would do a trip something like that. And yeah, once again, this was a video on my second channel. On this channel, I'm posting like Q&A videos, shorter videos that don't make it to the main channel, also some deleted scenes. So if you're interested in that, feel also free to subscribe to this channel. And if you want to see my full-length videos from Saudi Arabia, yeah, then head over to my main channel, Ken Abroad. And then thanks for watching, stay healthy, stay positive, and then see you in the next episode. Ciao, guys.